Hello and welcome to the channel. I am here for a discography review for you guys. Now for this discography review, I'll be reviewing the Trivium discography, and this is of course, to I guess hype up their new album that's coming out very soon, What the Dead Men Say. So I figured that it would be appropriate to review what all we have so far from this band. Now I think Trivium is probably one of the greatest bands in metal of the 2000s era. And they're definitely one of those bands that immediately come to mind when I think of a band I wish I would have gotten into sooner. I wish I would have, gotten into them around the time whenever I got into bands like Demon Hunter and As I Lay Dying and maybe some others, but I didn't get into Trivium until 2017, which I know I might get some looks for that, since that's very late to be getting into a band like Trivium, but I don't know, I just kind of thought that they were just, kind of typical metalcore, nothing really to write home about, I guess. I think I first listened to them in 2016, though. I listened to their song, Ember Inferno, and maybe that has something to do with, my mindset at the time. I just thought, yeah, it's, not bad, but, it's nothing to write home about, of course. But I did finally give these guys, a really good chance in 2017, and ever since then I became a fan, so that's how that happened for me. Now, I wouldn't really what you call a diehard Trivium fan. I would just more so consider myself a casual fan. I have a poster of their album Shogun, as you can see back there. I also have all their studio albums, including their new upcoming album, What the Dead Men Say. I have that album pre-ordered, and I can't wait to get that in the mail. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into what we have so far from this band. It all started, of course, with their debut, Ember Inferno, and like I said, the title track was my first Trivium song, and I think it's a good song. It is a song that has grown on me a little bit over the years, because obviously at first, I only thought it was okay, just an okay song, but it has grown on me a little bit. I like the heaviness to it, the instrumentation, and Matt Heafy's vocal delivery, and it's a fairly catchy song. And there's other great songs on this album too, like Pillars of Serpents and If I Could Collapse the Masses. I mean, these are some really good songs as well. Yeah, this album, Ember Inferno, it's not one of their best albums by any means. As a matter of fact, it's probably closer to the bottom for me. But that's not saying much, because Trivium hasn't had a bad album, and this album is still pretty good in its own right. But I think this album does have a few problems, though. For one, the production. Now, obviously, the production may just have to do with around the time that this album came out. This is still when Trivium was a very new band, of course. And also, this album feels like it does have some filler. Not too much, though, but yeah. The album doesn't have the best replay value or anything, but it does have some songs that are definitely worth returning to. But yeah, it's a good album, just not one of their best. Then, of course, we have Ascendency, which is, I guess, viewed as one of their best albums, and I can see why. It's definitely a great album. And this album also has, kind of the same, well, not the same problems as their debut, but I think some of these songs kind of do blend together too easily. That's really the only way I can describe my complaint with this album. But other than that complaint, it's a solid album. Some bands, they can be samey and still be great bands, of course. And Trivium's older stuff, yeah, it can be samey time to time. But yeah, this album is still really good, though. There's many great songs on here. I think some of their best songs are on this album, such as Rain, which is a real heavy one, of course. The title track, Ascendency, it's got to be one of their best songs. I love pretty much everything about it. Definitely one of my favorites on the album. I also really like Light to the Flies and Departure. These are some really good songs, of course. But yeah, definitely a great album, and probably one of their best. Next, we got the Crusade, and this is where Trivium started to go more thrash metal influenced opposed to more metalcore. Some people may not like this album for that reason, you know. Obviously, you know, I wasn't a Trivium fan back when this came out. As a matter of fact, I was not even a metalhead when this album came out, but I can just imagine, you know, some of the fan base, you know, kind of being divisive over this album at the time, because obviously, you know, this was definitely a change of sound for sure. More thrash metal opposed to metalcore, but I don't know. I think this album is really good, actually. A lot of great songs on here, like Detonation, Anthem, We Are the Fire, Becoming the Dragon, To the Rats, Tread the Floods. I mean, these are some really great songs, of course. You also got your fair share of underrated songs on here as well. But yeah, definitely great album. Some people view it as their best, and some people actually view it as their worst, surprisingly. Yeah, very divisive album in the fan base, but if you want to know where I stand with this album, I think it's a great album for sure. I just don't think it's their best work. That's all. But yeah, still a great album and definitely worth checking out for sure. Next up, we got my personal favorite Trivium album, Shogun. And yeah, this is probably their best album, at least in my opinion. There's definitely a lot to like about this album. Once again, they took that Metallica influence into this album as well. Definitely a lot of great songs like Down from the Sky, which is definitely one of my favorite Trivium songs, maybe even my all-time favorite Trivium song. I don't know, it's up there though. I just really love everything about it. The melodies of the guitars, just the melodies overall, Matt Heafy's vocal delivery, and I just really like everything about that song. It's just a really captivating song to me. I just really like everything about it. You also got other great songs too, like Insurrection and The Calamity, which I think are actually two very underrated Trivium songs. I also really like the title track, Shogun. Now, this is a song where they kind of experiment with prog a little bit, but yeah, this album is really good, and I think it's Trivium's best album. Next up, we got In Waves. Now, this is the album where they started to go a little, you know, kind of back to their roots a little bit, I guess. Not too much, though. This is more metalcore aimed, more so than the previous two that came before. But I think that this album is probably their most edgy sounding album. Now, I use edgy kind of loosely because I know some people, you know, might give me looks for calling this album edgy, but it's not like full on like edgy, like they went complete like Bring Me the Horizon or anything. But if I were to pick the Trivium album that, you know, is the most edgy sounding, I would definitely go with In Waves. And maybe that has to do with, you know, maybe the time around when this album came out, which was sometime in the early 2010s, which, you know, that sort of edgy emo scene was really at its peak at that point. So maybe that has something to do with the style that Trivium wanted to go for. Like I said, it's not entirely, but it's just, you know, just a little something that I've noticed. Even the album cover is kind of edgy as well, but still not a bad album. I mean, I don't think Trivium has ever released a bad album, so yeah, there's definitely great songs on here, like the title track. What else? I also really like Built to Fall, Caustic Are the Ties That Bind, Forsake Not the Dream. Forsake Not the Dream, I think, is one of their most underrated songs, I think. Definitely a song that I think deserves more recognition. Same could be said about Caustic Are the Ties That Bind. I just really love the melodies in this song and the riffs and the solo work and everything, and yeah, definitely a lot to like about this album. So my opinion about In Waves, it's a good album. It's just, the thing about this album is it's not one of their best, but it's not one of their worst either. It's just kind of in the middle for me. Still, really good album. Next up, we got Vengeance Falls, which also kind of has a edgy album cover as well, but the album cover is pretty cool, actually, as you can see. But yeah, definitely a really good album. This is an album where, this is the album where they kind of went a little more commercial, I guess. But this album, you know, it's not bad. You know, I don't think it's one of their best or anything, but it's still a really good album. I like Brave the Storm, Strife, which is, of course, their biggest song, and it's really catchy, and I like the drum work, guitar work, and everything about that song, and I can see why it's one of their biggest songs. Is it overrated? Yeah, I think it's kind of overrated, but I think it's a good song for what it is, though. I also really like No Way to Heal and Through Blood and Dirt and Bone. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of good songs on this album, but yeah, it is more, you know, radio friendly, more commercial, but this album kind of, you know, kind of showed an indication on, you know, what's to come next for Trivium, but still, I think it's a really good album for what it is. Next up, we got Silence in the Snow, which this is an album that a lot of people see as Trivium's weakest album. For me personally, I can maybe agree on that. I don't know. It's a bit of a tough call. I do like this album, but I can definitely understand where people are coming from when they say that this is their weakest. I don't know. It is hard to pick a least favorite Trivium album, and, you know, that can maybe be seen as a good thing, since, you know, they don't have any bad albums. But yeah, this album, obviously it's not one of their best, but it's still pretty good. I think the title track is pretty good. Kind of commercial, but I think it's a good song. Dead and Gone, Until the World Goes Cold is overrated for sure. I mean, it is definitely more commercial, but I don't know, I kind of like that song. I like the riffs and the vocal work and everything. Rise Above the Tides is definitely one of my favorite tracks on the album. And yeah, there's some good songs on this album, but it's just not one of their best. Obviously, this is the album where they kind of tone down with the heaviness. Like, there's no, you know, scream vocals or anything like that in this album, which, you know, can be seen as a good or a bad thing depending on the person, of course. But I don't know. It's one of their weakest, but I don't think it's as bad as some people make it out to be. Alright, so lastly, of course, we got The Sin and the Sentence, and there's no other way around it. This is easily one of their best. I mean, this album, I can't say that it's a return to form, but I feel like, you know, they just do a lot right with this album. You got a lot of experimentation going on in this album, for sure. There's some metalcore, of course, a little bit of thrash, progressive metal. I mean, this album, I think it has it all. The title track, The Sin and the Sentence, is such a great song, man. And yeah, definitely very intriguing as far as the melodies go, and just, I don't know, there's a lot to like about this song. The Heart from Your Hate. If you're someone who did like the album Silence in the Snow, this song is definitely for you. It's definitely one of the more mainstream sounding songs, but I don't know, I kind of like it. Betrayer, it's a great song. I just love the melodies and how intriguing they sound. The Wretchedness Inside is definitely one of the heaviest tracks on the album. Sever the Hand is also really good. I don't know, there's something about this song that I feel is very intriguing as far as the guitar work, and I don't know, it's very catchy, and I just like Matt Heafy's vocals. The Revanchist. I remember the first time I heard this song, it absolutely blew me away whenever I first heard it. It's very proggy, probably the most proggy song on the album. I love the solo work and the vocal work. There's just a lot to like about that song. Of course, Thrown into the Fire is another one of the heaviest tracks. I've seen some people say that this is one of the weakest tracks on the album. I'm honestly not sure if I'd agree with that. I actually do like this song. Now, I would agree that it doesn't really work as much as a closing track, but it is what it is. I think it's a pretty good song. But yeah, The Sin and the Sentence, definitely a great album and one of their best. Well, there you have it, guys. That is my review for the Trivium albums. I will be reviewing their new album, What the Dead Men Say, so stay tuned for that. I also wanted to say thank you guys for helping me getting close to 700 subscribers. I will be doing a thank you video for that. That is something I decided to do, so stay tuned for that as well. And for any newcomers to the channel, welcome. Welcome to the channel, of course. Thank you for subscribing, and yeah, that's my video, so thank you for watching. Have a nice day, and take care.